from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And I find myself in really great spirits because I'm feeling very happy because I am able to revisit this wonderful series, this landmark series, classic series, which is Twin Peaks. And it has been my great pleasure and honor to be able to discuss with you episode by episode just my feelings and thoughts and observations about this episode and all the events and characters that are going on with all these episodes, episode by episode. And so we are continuing on now with a discussion focusing in on the events leading up to and included in episode 27. It's referred to commonly as episode 27. And regarding also what's referred to as the second season of Twin Peaks. There's a lot going on, and so let us focus our discussions today on this. Maybe not necessarily focusing on anything beyond this subsequent episodes, although we might make some hints or suggestions or guesses maybe going forward, what may or may not happen, etc. Also, I don't hold myself out to be in any way an expert when it comes to Twin Peaks, so I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. So I apologize in advance for that. I'll try my best to correct where I can and also try to avoid where I can. But at the same time, I am coming at this as a fan of this show. I love this show. I love Twin Peaks. And so I'll try to express to you the reasons why I feel that way. But in that spirit, my dear friends, let us now jump into this episode 27. And my goodness, of course, we have the immediate aftermath of the discovery of the body, the gazebo with the giant chess piece. And of course, we understand from that episode prior that this was the work of the grisly, terrible, and horrific work of Wyndham Earle, much to the shock of Leo Johnson. You know, we got that huge zoom in at the previous episode. And then, of course, we have the revelation of this victim, who is played by Ted Raimi, by the way, and his character name is Rusty Tomasky, and so and we have a friend of Rusty's talking about their hopes and dreams in terms of music and love of beer, etc. So there's a kind of sadness in the air. The victims are, again, the references made about, next time the victim will be someone that Cooper knows. But even though there isn't necessarily a direct, say, friendship between this victim, Rusty, and Cooper, I think we still feel in the air a sense of loss, a sense of tragedy. This character is someone that is, for all intents and purposes, maybe a minor character in the whole grand scheme of the Twin Peaks show. I get it. But there is still a type of innocence lost, sadness, the loss of life that we still feel in there. And I think that's very important because, we are reminded of how Twin Peaks, the show, it came about because of this feeling of loss and tragedy in the air that had to do with the death of Laura Palmer. And so this reminder of that, even if it may be in the grand scheme of things, it might be, relatively speaking, somewhat of a minor point. Still, I think that is in the air, at least when I watch it. I definitely feel that. Incidentally, too, there are many other points in this episode that one might say we have links or callbacks to what we saw in, say, some of the early season 1 and first half of season 2 episodes of Twin Peaks. So it's great to see that. For instance, we have a reminder that there is still this love triangle, among Lucy and Andy and Dick Tremaine, right? After all, Lucy is pregnant, and she does, of course, mention her pregnancy in a previous episode at the wine tasting, about how she's not supposed to drink, and that is the way in which she then gets back at Dick Tremaine in terms of the spitting out of the wine. But this episode, she reminds us that she will decide, D-Day, Dad Day, and so she will decide who is to be the father of her child? Is it going to be Andy or is it going to be Dick Tremaine? And so Andy, I love his reaction when he hears this news. He's kind of happy when he hears his name, but he's upset when he hears Dick Tremaine's name. So it's a reminder too of this triangle, and it's also a reminder of the kind of rivalry that existed between Dick Tremaine and Andy. Of course, that rivalry turned into a sort of association or maybe even friendship as when they're talking about little Nicky and the discovery of that, etc. But now we have, we're going back, we're reminded of that situation that was revealed again in past episodes. So that's a nice callback. It's nice to hear about that. And also there is a very, very important callback as well to, say, the earlier episodes of Twin Peaks when we see the ending of this episode. So that's also very important. So we'll talk about that as well. But before we do, we should also say that there are other plot lines that are developing in this episode quite fast indeed. So at the latter half of the prior episode, we had this idea, or Jack got a cable or a communication, and we understand that he has to leave Twin Peaks, and we get wind as to what that was. He has a partner, and he says this partner was murdered. So that's pretty shocking news, but it means that he has to leave Twin Peaks. And will he be able to see Audrey before he leaves or not? Because it's kind of an emergency situation for him. Audrey is out, performing, we understand, work-related duties on behalf of her father. So she's not here, and they're not able to meet, and so there's this tension. Will Jack be able to meet Audrey or not before he leaves? Well, he tries to give a letter to Ben Horn. He tries to get messages to Audrey, of course, at the front desk. But when Audrey does arrive, they just don't cross paths. And even as Audrey is getting some of those messages, is about to read the messages we assume are from Jack, Hawk steps in, because Hawk has been asked by Cooper to ask Audrey to come to the station and help with the investigation regarding the poem, the strips of paper, each of one of which was sent to Shelley, one of which was sent to Dawn, and one of which was sent to Audrey. So throughout this episode too, we get the other characters here. Shelley is called by Norma, who's contacted on the phone in the diner when Shelley has that scene with Bobby in the diner, and there's a reaffirmation of their love too. Bobby says, "I love you, Shelley." And this moment too between Bobby and Shelley, and they're kissing, and it's romantic. They're very much into each other. This is also could be said to be a kind of callback to earlier episodes of Twin Peaks, where they were really they were always happy and in love. And remember the scene where Bobby, when Shelley's in the hospital, in what was it, episode 8, after the burning of the mill, etc., that he goes and visits Shelley, and he expresses his love, and she expresses her love as well. So it's nice to see that reaffirmation, especially afterwards when Leo came back home. There was a bit of tension, and indeed we had some scenes where they were fighting, and this was around the time that Bobby was trying to get into the good graces of the Horn clan, and maybe some kind of attraction that he was feeling towards Audrey Horn. But now with Bobby and Shelley, and that scene in the prior episode where Bobby walked in just as Gordon Cole and Shelley were kissing, I think that might have a lot to do with what Bobby and Shelley are doing, and in particular Bobby is doing in terms of reaffirming his love for her. So this is a nice moment as well. So, but going back to the previous conversation that we were having here, so Shelley got one of the pieces of poetry that Cooper then got wind of when she mentioned offhand one of the lines there, and also Donna as well. And Donna is called to the phone, or not called to. She is called by her mother, who says that Cooper, they want her to help with the investigation. So during this time, of course, she is in, looks like the attic or something, looking at the past documents, a birth certificate, and she finds that the line for the father is blank. Oh my goodness. So what is this pointing to? And of course, this is some kind of further investigation or inquiry by Donna as to what is the relationship between Ben Horn and Eileen Hayward. And there are some pictures too that are associated with this. I love the picture of a young, the young trio and the mustached, right, Ben Horn. It's really quite remarkable picture. So here we have what looks like another triangle in Twin Peaks. I mean, talk about triangles. There's so many triangles in Twin Peaks. I mean, there's the triangle formulations and the markings that we saw from Margaret and, of course, Major Briggs. And when they're combined together, that forms Owl Cave and all that stuff. There's also the triangles, the love triangles that are formed by characters. So, it's amazing to see the triangle formation coming about in many capacities. So here's another triangle, Eileen and Doc Hayward and Ben Horn. So what is the implication of this? Again, we shall have to wait and see. But before we get some truth about that, some revelations about that, of course, a little bit later in the episode, there is the investigation. These three women go and discuss the situation with Dale Cooper, and Dale Cooper also reveals that this is also a very key poem in terms of a hint of a relationship, a dynamic between Dale's past, and so this might be another sign of Wyndham Earle taunting Dale Cooper. And also he asks, were there any odd visits or odd encounters that these characters had? And Shelley mentions the large tip that she received at the diner for a cup of coffee. I think she was like $10. And also Audrey mentions the time that she was at the library, and then also in meeting the strange man. And then Donna talks about the visitor that she had, claiming that he was a friend of her father's. Yes. So now Dale Cooper is really on the hunt, or he's really putting the pieces together. But of course, as Wyndham Earle mentions a little bit later in this episode, he is still a couple steps ahead as he's listening in, in the bugged microphone or in the office there. And one of the reasons why he's maybe a couple steps ahead is that by the end of this episode, or towards the end of this episode, I think Wyndham Earle realizes the significance of the petroglyph, or the cave painting that was found in Owl Cave, that it is not just a painting of some sort, but it seems to be a map. And it seems to be a map leading to the Black Lodge. So we understand also from this episode that the investigation, or the reminder of Project Blue Book, thanks to the great efforts of Cappy and Major Briggs, we understand that there is a deep connection between Wyndham Earle and Project Blue Book, and that Wyndham Earle was deeply intelligent, but also very consumed by the investigation into Project Blue Book. And there's some footage that they see, which we understand is Wyndham Earle talking about some kind of scientific theory or explanation about Dukpas and sort of the lodge, and sort of the tangible nature of evil. And so this also finds expression later in this, or elsewhere in this episode, when Wyndham Earle's talking with Leo in the cabin about the Dukpas and how they're sort of like a priesthood of evil of some sort. So this might have some kind of connection with the Black Lodge, and perhaps also by extension the White Lodge, which has always been in the air, but not quite sure where this is leading. But as we know from this episode, it looks like it's going to lead to some kind of location somewhere, because the Owl Cave painting is indeed a map. So where is this going to lead? Who knows? Who knows? And my goodness, where that leads in terms of the actual ending of this episode. Wow. Talk about a callback to past events of Twin Peaks. But again, as I mentioned, I'll get to that momentarily. But before we do, there are some other things I want to mention here, which is, let's see. So, well, let's go with that. So there's the situation of Audrey and Jack, which I alluded to. So Jack has to leave. And of course, this is upsetting to Ben, because it's going to affect the Ghostwood project, the Stop Ghostwood project that he has his eyes set on. But there's also a sort of confirmation of the sort of bond between the two of them, Jack and Ben Horn. But Jack has to leave. But as he leaves for his his private jet, Audrey also returns. But Audrey must see Jack before he leaves. Will she make it in time? So she tries to chase after him before he leaves on his flight. And so who does she rely upon for racing to the airport? But none other than Pete, who's in the lobby there composing poems about Josie. You know, talk about poetry in Twin Peaks. There's the poem that was ripped up into three, and there's also this poem that Pete seems to be composing over a course of an episode or two about his longing and love for Josie, who has, of course, died. But Pete to the rescue, because it's Pete who drives, at Audrey's insistence, of course. Audrey calls him you, right, to the airport. And Pete, yes, bless his heart, he's able to catch just in time. And there's this moment between Audrey and Jack, and she says, "I love you." And here, much like Bobby says to Shelley, "I love you" in this episode, here we have Audrey saying to Jack, "I love you." So here is, at last, the expression of love in that, at this very key moment when Jack has to say goodbye. And of course, he doesn't know if he's going to ever come back, of course. But this makes Audrey feel a lot of things, I think, of an emotional intensity. And so she says that she is a virgin and that she wants to be intimate with Jack before he goes. And there she says, of course, that they go into the plane, which is his. So there they share, we assume they share a close intimacy with each other. So as Pete is, of course, waiting outside. Incidentally, too, we should mention here this detail about Pete. Also, there's a detail about Dale Cooper, and also there's a detail about an elderly woman who is a customer at the Double R Diner who's eating pie, and we see each of these characters and their arms or their hands. They are their hands are there, and then suddenly their hands are twitching with the music, the eerie music over the soundtrack there. So, what is this going on? What's going on here, and what does this mean for these characters? Is this some kind of, well, what is this? Is this a sign? What's going on here? It reminds me, of course, of the scene from an earlier episode, Harold Smith, right? And when Donna got the diary, the secret diary of Laura Palmer, and she walks outside, Harold Smith reaches out and tries to grab it, but of course, as he reaches out, his hand twitches as he faints, because of course he's so scared and petrified he can't leave his house. So that twitching of the hand is it's a kind of very, I think, significant gesture, and it's given a lot of significance here because we have the eerie music and we have a number of characters that seem to be sharing the same or similar gesture. So what does this mean? Who knows? We may or may not find out its significance later on in future episodes. So let's keep this in mind in terms of that. So yes, what is the significance of this? Very interesting indeed. And so, but let's continue, of course, because we have, I mentioned earlier, Major Briggs and his investigation and his revelation of the materials regarding Project Blue Book. And then, of course, later with Major Briggs out and about in the woods alone, he is confronted by people who are dressed up in this costume. And then he is drugged or tranquilized, and later he is captured and held in captivity on this kind of wheel thing. And then there's the danger of the bow and arrow. Of course, the arrow nearly kind of threatening Major Briggs by Wyndham Earle to try to get information. And do we hear some reference to the line and maybe reverse speak here by Major Briggs? Maybe we do, and maybe those astute listeners of what Major Briggs is talking about when he's held captive like this, maybe there is a reference, another callback to a previous moment in Twin Peaks where someone might have referred to something about, that gum you like is going to come back in style. So that might also be another type of callback. But in any event, now Major Briggs is held captive by Wyndham Earle. Speaking of being held in captive, when a little bit earlier in this episode, when Wyndham Earle's talking with Leo, and Leo's cleaning the sort of the saw, the table saw, and looking up at the cards and seeing Shelley and being reminded of Shelley, and he already picked up that little controller button. Leo believes that by pressing this button, he can inflict harm on Wyndham Earle, and he pushes the button. But unfortunately for Leo, he doesn't realize until too late that the pressing of the button really inflicts harm on Leo because of the electric shock that is sent. Again, we recall the I think the neck bracelet. And so he can't, he doesn't realize, he has to press it again and again to realize that indeed he is being harmed, not Wyndham, who's just laughing and cackling at Leo's situation here. So this is really quite a remarkable moment because when I watch this, I really feel bad for Leo Johnson. You know, Leo Johnson, who's been one of the villains of Twin Peaks, and even to the point where when he was in his sedate condition and when he came to and was attacking Shelley during one of the season 2 episodes. It was like a horror film. It was really scary. And indeed, all throughout season 1, he was a very a villainous character, especially when we were reminded of his associations with Ronette and Laura Palmer and Jacques Renault and what happened the night that Laura was killed and his involvement with that to the capacity that he was involved. So Leo Johnson has been, one of the villains of this work. But now we have a moment where we sympathize with his plight here. He is a victim of Wyndham Earle's evil. So, and he seems like a very innocent character right now, especially now that he's expressing a type of affection or remembrance of Shelley. And this might come into play, or might not. Again, we shall have to wait and see when we get into future episodes. But here we have, yes, the fate of Leo Johnson. What's going to happen to him in the hands of Wyndham Earle? So, in any event, yes. Leo Johnson, again, the evolution of the character is quite a fascinating one in the context of the Twin Peaks saga. But that is not all that we see in this episode, right? Because we have more intrigue involving the Miss Twin Peaks contest between Dwayne and Lana. In particular, of course, we remember that Lana wants to win this contest, and so they find out, or she discovers that the judges for Twin Peaks will include Dick Tremaine. So Norma is also a judge. Dick Tremaine is also a judge as well. So the idea is that maybe Lana can try to convince Dick Tremaine to cast his vote for her. So all that needs to be done is they just need to get together. So Dwayne and Lana seem to be hatching some kind of plot in order to have Lana be able to succeed in getting all the votes necessary to be crowned Miss Twin Peaks. So what's going to happen with the Miss Twin Peaks contest? Again, we shall have to wait and see. Some interesting intrigue and emotion that's happening here. Also, speaking of intrigue and emotion, I mentioned, of course, this idea of what's going on with Ben Horn and Eileen, and of course the whole notion of the birth certificate that Donna finds, or the information about the father, which are conspicuously left blank. And of course, there's a scene also in this episode between Doc Hayward and Ben Horn, as Doc Hayward is examining Ben Horn. And then also this is the opportunity for Doc Hayward to essentially confront Ben Horn and say, he just urges him to stop what it is he's doing for the sake of essentially maintaining secrets. And what Doc Hayward seems to be implying is that there are times in life where it is probably more beneficial to maintain secrets and to avoid any harm, any hurt. And so Ben Horn has the opposite feeling, though. He seems to imply that he must continue on with this, whatever this is. Getting a sense, perhaps, of what this might mean. But they seem to be on opposite sides of this coin of dispute, shall we say, Doc Hayward and Ben Horn. It reminds me, too, as a type of maybe subtle or nuanced callback to the season 1 and the first half of the season 2 of Twin Peaks, which is the idea of secrets, right? If we recall the dream or vision, again, depending on how much we adopt the viewpoint of Major Briggs during that scene with Bobby in the diner many an episode ago about the vision that he had and the idea of how he distinguishes between dreams and visions. But in any event, the moment when we had the man from another place mention in Cooper's dream regarding this figure who looks like Laura Palmer, the man from another place says she's filled with secrets. And also, if you remember Dr. Jacoby, when he's talking about Laura, that she was like very impenetrable. There were some things that he could never understand about Laura. There are some secrets that could never be discovered. James felt the same way about Laura. There are things that he could never find out about Laura. So this idea of secrets has always been part of Twin Peaks, and so it's very interesting now to see Doc Hayward on the side of keeping secrets, rather than, say, on the side of discovering the heart of secrets. So very interesting indeed. It's almost like another type of role reversal, especially when we recall, too, that Doc Hayward has, for all intents and purposes, been on the side of the law enforcement and authorities, which is, of course, the purpose of which is to discover the secrets behind the mysteries. And so that he's now espousing maybe the opposite approach in terms of his conversation with Ben Horn. I think is a very fascinating turn of events. Again, it adds more intrigue as to what this secret is involving Ben Horn and Eileen Hayward. Again, we shall have to wait and see. I think also we have, in terms of love in the air, I mentioned Audrey and Jack. There's also the relationship between Dale Cooper and Annie, so the idea, there's a lovely scene between the two of them at the diner, and it kind of slowly goes back, and we realize that they are but two people in this wide expanse of a community, as expressed in the diner, but at the same time we are hearing just their conversation. And they are just so much into each other that they're not even noticing anything else. That's what Cooper implies when he says, he had this investigation, but he could only think about Annie. And Annie says that she sees his face, in the cooking. And so this idea too of that he will teach her how to dance, and they kiss. So they are truly in love, but there are some notes of some ominous notes in the air. The crashing of the dishes and the close up of what looks like the close up of the drip of I think it's syrup, and so it has that ominous sense of what is going to happen. Is there something ominous that is going to be associated, say, with this relationship between Dale Cooper and Annie? Who knows? This ominous tone seems to continue, of course, a little bit later in terms of the dancing and the kisses. And of course, Annie says that, she wanted more. She wants more than kisses. The implication means that she wants to be intimate with Cooper. And during this time, too, we have the revelation that she will participate in the Miss Twin Peaks contest. But it's very interesting timing, too, because this is a moment where, again, another callback to some kind of Twin Peaks events from the past. This time it's the giant that we see again, right, with this gesture. Now, what does this mean? And how does this have any significant link to the timing that, right, in terms of is it a coincidence or not that this seems to be appearing just at the point after Annie mentions her intent to participate and enter into the Miss Twin Peaks contest. So very, very interesting stuff indeed. But the puzzles and the callbacks to the past, and also the developments forward, it's all here in this episode. Now, I also should mention, too, the box. What's in the box? So now we have Catherine and Andrew, because, of course, from an earlier episode, we discovered that one box was opened to reveal a smaller box inside, and now Andrew is able to unlock the second box, or this smaller box, to reveal yet another smaller box or cube of some sort. Again, not quite sure what this is or what is going to be left. Is there anything else inside this box or cube? And we'll have to find out. Again, what's in the box? What's in the box? Is there anything? Is there anything in the box? Is there nothing in the box? There are a lot of boxes in Twin Peaks as well. Very, very interesting and very exciting indeed. And I think we should also say, and I've been saving it for last because it is the end of the episode too, because I've mentioned, of course, throughout this discussion that there are callbacks and there are references to past moments, past characters of Twin Peaks, and this is surely the case when we get to how this episode closes. Of course, just before the final moments we have, as I mentioned earlier, Wyndham Earle realizing the significance of the cave painting, that it's a map to the Black Lodge. So it seems like all roads are leading to the Black Lodge. And at the point that this is mentioned, we go to the woods. We go to this sort of like place or circle or pool in the ground, something. Not quite sure. It's dark, but we see a hand emerge out of what seems to be nothing, the darkness. And who is this emerging? None other than Bob. Bob is back. Now remember, the last time we had seen Bob, or a vision of Bob, was the moment where Josie died in the hotel room there after Thomas Eckert had also died. And so this is the vision of as Sheriff Truman is holding the body of Josie in his arms. It then fades with the spotlight and the vision or the image of Bob and coming out from behind the bed there. And of course, there's also the moment of the man from the other place dancing on the bed as well. But here now, at the end of this episode, we have again the appearance of Bob, and also we have, as I say, this ground portion of the circle or whatever it is. We have a reflection, and what's that reflection of? Red curtains. We have red curtains in Twin Peaks again. You know, there's so many red curtains, including, of course, this place that Cooper sees at the very start or at one of the early episodes. Of course, red curtains were in a lot of places like One Night Jacks, etc. So what is the significance of the appearance or reappearance of the red curtains made in a reflection, I should say as well? Is there some significance about the reappearance of red curtains? Is there some significance about reflections and, by extension, mirrors? Maybe is there some kind of hint or clue about what we might expect to see in later episodes? And what of Bob? What's going on here with Bob? And are there going to be any other characters that we have seen from, say, the first season or the first half of the second season that we haven't seen lately because of these turns of events that have been happening since around, say, episodes 16 or 17 onwards to now? So what's going to happen, and what's the significance of the Miss Twin Peaks contest? What's the significance of the Owl Cave map? What's the significance of the Black Lodge? What does all this have to do, if anything, with the red curtains, man from another place, Bob, etc., 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 Project Blue Book, etc., etc., etc.? Wow. So a lot of things are happening in this episode 27. And we have, as you may know, we have a couple more episodes to go in terms of this season. So we shall continue on with our discussions, my dear friends, about this great series, which is Twin Peaks. But until the next discussion video, I very much hope that you're happy and healthy and well, and that you continue to watch a lot of great shows and movies and episodes like those from Twin Peaks. So until the next video, my dear friends, thank you and cheers.